Halloween Cup is returning in Pokemon Go, and as is tradition, we're doing a spooky guide for this cup. But to spare you some time, we're not going to go over all the best individual Pokemon this time, seeing that we've done so for a few years now, and you likely know most of the best picks at this point. Azumarill, Mandibuzz, Galarian Weezing, Greninja, Toxapex, with a few newcomers like Clodsire and Malamar. Instead though, we're going to go over some terrifying teams for this limited cup, so let's dive in. Welcome back everyone. Poison, Bug, Ghost, Dark, and Fairy. Most of you know this cup and its Pokemon, so getting into our teams for this cup, our first one comes with our one and only Clodsire team. Clod is the big newcomer this year, especially after the recent buff to Poison Sting. It'll be one of the huge Halloween Cup Pokemon and can fit into most teams, but to not be too redundant, this will be the only Clodsire team here. Whimsicott and Clodsire make for a fantastic core, covering each other's weaknesses remarkably well, but to cover some of the remaining threats for these two like Venusaur, Frostlass, and Alolan Ninetales, we have Trash Wormadam as a solid defensive closer. While its charged moves are a bit more expensive, the chip damage of Confusion and the defensive steel subtyping help make it work as a closer. Alternatively though, I think Skeledirge could work well in a similar role. Next is Jellicent, Greninja, and Mandibuzz. Now Jellicent has been nerfed in some ways with Surf going up in energy, but the move is still more powerful at 75 now. It's also a pretty bulky Pokemon, so I think a nerf like that is a little bit less impactful. The big key is that Jellicent provides a lot of useful coverage against meta Pokemon, including Azumarill, Clodsire, and Toxapex, major bulky players in this format, while also having moves to still threaten things like Golurk, Alolan Marowak, and Carbink. Greninja though acts as your artillery, your offensive additional coverage against those and some other ghost types. Plus, it hits most of the dark types pretty hard too, and Mandibuzz makes for some nice bulk for your late game. Not as much damage, but it allows you to prioritize your shields for Jellicent in a bad matchup, or the glassy Greninja. Team number 3 is Togetic, Jellicent again, and Shadow Grimer. Now Togetic is obviously in an awkward spot with Clodsire front and center, but I think it provides a unique role. It can threaten all the dark types, from Greninja to Mandibuzz, while also resisting ground types like Golurk. That said, Wigglytuff makes for another option if you'd like a less flexible, but more brute force approach. Jellicent returns again in this team, but it makes for a decent core alongside Togetic, being a nice foil to Pokemon like Clodsire and other poison types, though Runerigus can fill that role too, just being weak to Greninja and Azumarill. But the real star of the show here is Shadow Grimer, who does some really unique things. It's a pure poison type, meaning that it isn't weak to water or ice like Clodsire, but it still acts as a pseudo ground type with Mud Slap and Mud Bomb. Obviously the shadow aspect makes Shadow Grimer less bulky, so you can also use the standard form, but I do like the extra pressure of Mud Slap in its shadow form. Grimer is also a heavier XL investment, but you can easily use High IV Specimen, so a lucky one could be a great candidate. Next up is a team that will address the meta really well while also threatening Clodsire, being Guzzlord, Shadow Golurk, and Azumarill. Now obviously Guzzlord and Azumarill aren't immune to Clodsire's moves, but they still have valuable tools. With Guzzlord's steady chip damage and Azumarill's water and ice moves, the team can struggle against enemy Azumarill if you aren't aligned well, but Shadow Golurk's pressure and Guzzlord's Sludge Bomb can still take it down if you're stuck in a bad matchup, as long as you have an energy advantage. Now when faced with a Clodsire up front, I would recommend staying in with Guzzlord and letting it play out, sending out Golurk after your Guzzlord is taken out. Our final team today is Frostlass, Toxapex, and Greninja once again. Now this team has a Glacier lead and closer, so it's definitely important that these two get your shields, whether it's both shields on one or splitting them between the two. Toxapex is bulky enough that it's fine against most foes. The nice thing about this team is that every Pokemon has tools to threaten Clodsire. Even though Toxapex loses, it could still be advantageous to chip opposing Clods down with Brine. But overall, I think these three work really well together, with Tox and Greninja covering many of the threats to Frostlass like Azumarill, Carbink, and Mandibuzz. And there's still some nice overlap to give you additional safety. I do think some ghost types could threaten this team if you're misaligned, but none of the team is truly walled by many ghosts, besides maybe Toxapex being weak to Jellicent. And that wraps up our Halloween Cup teams today. Let us know if you're going to try any of them out, or if you have your own ideas. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming guides. Until next time though, stay spooky and best of luck in the Halloween Cup. Take care.